Hi, everyone, and welcome to the CPA Moms podcast. I am your host, Nicole, and today is all about fear, specifically the fear of leaving what feels like a very secure and safe thing, having a job, and launching your own practice. I am here with Mayumi Young, and I think the first question to ask is having a job really any safer or more secure than starting your own practice?
Well, I really like this question because, well, certainly, at least my generation, I don't know that this is true for the younger generation. The idea of a job being safe and secure was something that we grew up with a lot, and certainly our parents. I'm Gen X, I think. And so we were right on the cusp of the idea of our parents working the same job for 20 years and retiring and getting a pension that was a defined benefit plan and they could live off that for the rest of their life. Like that was normal. And I know the younger generation is like, what's that? I don't understand. What's a defined benefit plan? Um, so we were right on the cusp where there was all this uncertainty where it was really shifting from this idea of staying in one place for 20, 30, your whole career and retiring with the same company to companies really getting away from providing those retirement benefits and there being this expectation that you are getting more experience and you've had some maybe corporate experience and public experience and wanting somebody with more well versed and more well rounded and with more experience and diversity. And so the idea of security, first of all, is philosophically not real. Like no one can make you feel safe. It's an internal job. And when we look for safety outside of ourselves, whether that's to another person providing safety or money providing safety or a job, then we become totally at the effect of that circumstance. So if we have it, then we feel safe. And if we don't feel safe. And I, for one, don't like walking around in my experience in my life, um, needing my experience to be dependent on the circumstance that's there. And so, really, it's an illusion. And so we can create feeling safe in any circumstance. We can create being free in any circumstance. Nelson Mandela, perfect example of you can be confined to a 10 by 10 cell and still be more free than most of us walking around on the planet. So it really is a mindset. It's a way of being, a way of experiencing the world absent the circumstances that you happen to be in. And then you're never at the effect of what's going on around you. So I think that having a job can be the right vehicle for some people, depending on what your goals are. And having your own firm can be the right vehicle for some people, depending on what your goals are. And to use this idea of safety as a decision maker as to which vehicle you want to get in and which one's right for you, I think is misleading. I think the better question to ask yourself is, what's the future that you're trying to create and which vehicle best aligns with that? And then create feeling safe in any choice that you make, in any vehicle that you choose to get in life. And so I think new rules, new day, new time.
I read something that said that fear can actually be a sign that you are ready because it means like you're standing right there on the edge of growth. And so you're ready. You just have that fear, which everyone has that fear of the unknown, right? So,
Definitely.
I mean, as a serial entrepreneur, what is your relationship with fear and starting new businesses? Is that an indicator to you that you're ready or maybe that you're not ready?
Great question. I think you're right mostly. Um, there's a healthy amount of fear that goes into anything that would lead to growth and expansion. I love that you made that connection between fear and growth. And I say a healthy amount of fear because we don't want to be terrified. We don't terrorize ourselves when we're trying to grow and expand. But being comfortable is the antidote to growth. We don't grow when we're comfortable. There's always that sort of, you want to push, you want to be at that growing edge where, and at that growing edge, there's always some level of discomfort. Does the discomfort always equal fear? Not always. Not always. Um, but in many of my ventures, there's been some tinge of uncertainty. And with uncertainty can come fear. You can transfer and translate fear into other emotions. You can translate it into excitement. You can translate it into, and the most common one that I use is courage. And, what people probably have heard many times is that courage is acting in the face of fear, not trying to get rid of fear. And so for me, I lean on courage more than anything, or inspiration. Usually my inspiration is sufficient to override any fear or worry or doubt. But I think that, the idea that fear being a signal that you're ready is so counterintuitive but accurate in many instances, because especially for accountants. So I've spent, I don't know, 2 decades coaching and training and supporting accounting professionals, women mainly, moms mainly. And one of the things that I've always done is do personality profiles. And I do this for everybody. And there's a particular profile that we as accountants have mostly. I actually don't fit the typical profile mold, but most accountants have this profile, and it's actually the most risk adverse profile there is. And so there's something to be said for giving ourselves some grace that it if you're feeling scared about launching something, it literally doesn't have to mean that you're not ready. Sometimes it is a sign that you're not ready, but mostly it's not. It mostly means that you're normal and you're human. And I think one of the things people try to do is they try to get rid of the fear before they take an action. And learning how to understand how much, like, what that fear is saying to you is, I think, is super critical and super important. I usually ask people to be more specific. People are like, I'm so scared. I'm like, what are you afraid of? Name it. Say specifically what the fear is, because what you'll discover is, as you're pulling that thread of, well, I'm afraid I'm going to fail. Well, what will fail? You'll fail. It will fail. What will fail? Because when we use these broad strokes, all we do is just put ourselves into fight or flight, and we can't think. And when we're in fight or flight, and fear is biologically will shut your thinking brain, your frontal cortex off. And you'll turn on your animal brain, which is, the back of your brain. And what happens is you need your frontal cortex to think. It's your critical thinking, it's your creative thinking, it's where you have your best ideas. And so to keep yourself out of that fight or flight, um, get specific. Name your fear exactly. Um, and what you'll discover is, well, okay, well, I'm not really afraid of this, and I'm not really worried about that. The only thing I'm really worried about is, will I have enough time? And when you can get that granular about the fear, then you have command over it. Now there's something you can do about that. All right, well, what could I do to mitigate that fear of having enough time? Can I get a coach to support me around time management? Or is there trainings? Are there systems that I could put in place to support myself? Can it be mitigated? And, I think that the fear begins to dissipate when we're not just going, ah. So, yeah, I think that fear can be a great stimulus. So can pain. The pain of staying where you are. If the pain of staying is greater than the pain of the fear associated with the fear of leaving, then you kind of have to leave, right? Like you can't stay. You actually will suffer if you stay where you are. I'll end on this point in this topic. If you've ever seen a nautilus shell, and if you cut one open, a nautilus shell is like an ancient living organism. Just Google nautilus shells. You can see an image of it. And you'll see that it starts off with they're chambers. There's all these, little sections that are kind of look hollow, and then they're walled off in between. And as you go farther out on the spiral, the chambers get bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, the idea here is that when we start off in a very small chamber. That's us sort of, as a seed of potential of the person that we're becoming. But as we grow, we have to leave the chamber we're in, and we go because we've outgrown it. And then we grow into the next chamber. And when you grow into the next chamber, you have to wall off the old one. And so what happens is many of us, I find especially true for accountants, is that we've outgrown where we are. And you can feel that you've outgrown it. It feels uncomfortable to stay where you are. There's some level of suffering that's happening. And yet the fear of going into the bigger chamber has stopped you from moving, but you can't stop growth. And so you'll either sit and suffer, or as I say, the universe will come and unfeather your nest, and you'll grow in ways that you don't want to grow. But, I prefer to grow by choice as opposed to grow by having a cosmic 2x4 kick me out of the place that I'm no longer suitable or fitting. So, I think that having a healthy balance and knowing when it's the right amount of fear, I think is really critical.
Yeah, I love that analogy of the nautilus shell. That makes so much sense. And you said something about people want the fear to disappear before they get started. And I think in line with that is they feel like, or they think that I need to have confidence in order to start. But really, truly, like, it doesn't matter how much studying you do, how much researching you do, like you get that confidence from just starting and realizing that you can do something. And that's what gives you the confidence to then take the next step and the next step. So fear is kind of just the gatekeeper, if you will, for that, holding back that confidence that you can get if you just take that first step forward.
Absolutely. There's so much, not just confidence, but trust that's built with
Mm,
yourself when you take command, when you grab the wheel of your life and you command how your life, the direction your life is going, versus sitting in the passenger seat hoping that your boss will do this or opportunity will do that. When you start to own and take charge and take control of your own life, that builds so much trust and confidence in your ability to do anything. It's super powerful. And I think you said something about, people are waiting to get confidence. And there's this conversation I always have about life. And I think most human beings walk around as human doings. They want to know, what do I do so that I can have the result, so that I can then be confident in this case. Tell me what to do so that I can have security and then I'll be confident. And that's do, have, be. And life doesn't work that way. You were spot on to say that life works literally the complete opposite, where you take that step, you take control, and you stand in, I'm choosing to be confident. I'm going to choose being confident. So there's a be first. Who are you going to be? Then you take the action that's consistent with that way of being. So if you're confident, if you're being confident, what's the action that a confident person would take? Well, they would leave their job, ask for the promotion, they would start their own practice. Like they would take an action that's consistent with being confident, standing up for yourself, speaking up for yourself. These are actions that are doings that are consistent with being confident. And then you have the result. Then I have financial success, opportunity to have it all, have your career and your family. You have the have is the byproduct of you becoming someone and then taking the actions of that are consistent with that way of being, and then you have the result later. So I think you're spot on with that.
So one of the other things that you touched on briefly was that a lot of times people, I guess, confuse fear with, well, confuse other feelings with fear. So how do you know the difference between fear and intuition?
It's a great question. I probably use the word trust your intuition more than a normal accountant or professional CEO has used. And I feel like I have to retrain, especially women in the profession, on using one of our greatest superpowers, which is our intuition. Everybody has intuition, men, women, but especially women, it's one of our superpowers. And I feel like, at least when I went through public and corporate, there was no conversation about use your intuition. It was a very much a thinking game, a thinking sport. And emotions weren't there, feelings weren't part of it. Intuition, oh my gosh, what are you? Woo woo? Weird? No. And yet, I have discovered that all of the best decisions that I have ever made in life and certainly in business have been guided by some level of trusting my intuition. So the feelings versus intuition is a very tricky distinction to navigate. Super tricky. And I say that because in my personal experience, I think you need um I think you need practice. I think you need time to develop trust. And it's almost like a new language. It's like before you have the command of another language and before you can speak and be multilingual, you need time to hear that language, speak that language, interact with it. You need more opportunity to distinguish. And so intuition, in my experience, is a kind of almost like a second language. And it has distinctions. For me, I can feel in my body what is intuition guiding me versus an idea. And it
Mm.
feels different in my physical body, but it's not the same for everyone. So when you feel intuition, and I don't know how you can sense it, Nicole, for you, but when it's usually in my like solar plexus for me, or my heart. It's in my body. It's definitely below my neck. and and it's a sensation and it's super subtle. Oftentimes my intuition confuses my brain. Like my brain is like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And you generally, when I'm going, well, that doesn't make any sense, that's usually my clue that that's my intuition speaking and not my brain coming up with another idea. Thoughts are great. Thinking is great. Well, when you're asking the right questions, it can be great. It can be a very bad neighborhood too. Um, but I'm mostly guided by my intuition. Um, because I have discovered that my intuition has 100% batting average. And anytime I've gone against my intuition, um, it has failed 100% of the time, no exceptions. And, I'm in my 50s. And so I've lived, I'm past midlife. And I can say that I'm finally now not resisting my intuition. I'm letting it have its way with me. And it's a lot easier that way. And, and the thing about intuition is it doesn't always make sense. It really
Mm.
doesn't always make sense.
Yeah, that's true. That's a great distinction. And that is a very good point because sometimes I think that's why we are resist intuition is because no, that doesn't make sense, even though there's such a deep feeling like this is the right way to go. But no, 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 no. And we can really fight that. But I loved what you said about trust. And I found that in my own life that like I've gotten to the point where I don't want to say I don't ever feel fear, but I've just gotten to the point where I have figured it out so many times, whatever that it is. I've been able to just do it and then figure it out as I've gone along, that I just trust that whatever step I need to take, even if it's scary, it's okay. Like I've done this 100 times before. I can figure it out again. So thank you so much for joining me. This has been a very insightful conversation. Is there anything else on fear you'd like to say before we close out?
Well, I'll complete with just like a personal example or story about what it can look like to take a leap of faith. And I want to
Mm.
say that, and it's called a leap for a reason, um, because there's a difference between having faith and being foolish. You know, if I were to want to transverse the Grand Canyon, and there's like just the gap between one side and the other, taking a leap into the Grand Canyon is just foolish. But if you can shorten the distance or the gap between, if you can get more information or get more clarity and make that distance shorter, and I can say in my experience, it almost never completely closes. The gap never, there's always a gap. There's always a certain amount of, you have to, it's not necessarily even going to be a step across to a new future. It's almost always a leap of some kind. And in my experience, when I was at a place in my career and talking about the pain of staying is greater than, you know, the fear of what you're stepping into and the fear of the unknown. I had left public and I went into corporate, and I had my dream job. I was traveling around the world. I had created exactly the career I wanted, and yet I was deeply unhappy, miserable, numb. I would even describe it often as dead inside. And I just felt like my life literally had no meaning. And I didn't have a clue. When you talk about like you don't necessarily have to know what you're doing to take that step forward, I had no clue what was going to create, you know, where happiness was or why I was even unhappy where I was. It was illogical. I had the perfect job, and yet I knew I wasn't in the right place, and I ended up quitting. And I didn't have a safety net. I didn't have stuff, I didn't have money saved. I used retail therapy because I was so unhappy. So I literally wasn't set up. Now, I'm not suggesting, I'm not sharing this story to suggest, yeah, quit your job, have no safety net. Yeah, just do it. But to share that, you know, I'm deeply spiritual. I don't know what everyone's particular religious or spiritual or faith is, but for me, I'm very spiritual, and I felt like I could um that I would that I could take the step and that I would be divinely guided. And it was almost kind of like an agreement. I want to be called. I want to feel like I'm I'm being used for some greater purpose, and that my life would forever be guided by that and not be driven by the the construct of what we're given in this culture and in the society of the stable job and the money and the na na na. And this was back in 2000, and miracles happened for me within I didn't know how I was going to pay my mortgage, yet I got money in the bank. And this is not a joke, I literally got enough money to go 3 months. And I had said like, well, if all else fails, I can go back and get another job in 3 months, like just give myself 3 months. And I had just enough money show up to cover 3 months. And every month, I didn't know how I was going to pay my mortgage or my bills that month. And every month, something would show up, a consulting opportunity, just things, miracles. Every day, I was like guided because I just stayed true to myself and true to what I believed my life was for. And I have never looked back from that moment. Now, I have experienced my first two business, I would categorize as failures in a traditional business sense, in that they didn't have the financial success that would have created sustainability, but it had tremendous impact on the people I was able to serve, and tremendous growth for me as I developed mastery around all aspects of what it is to be an entrepreneur. And the power of that leap, that the fact that I took command, I called that before that my default life. And the moment I chose to take that leap of faith became my created
Mm.
and invented life. And every day since has been a life of meaning, of purpose. Yeah, it's been hard. Yeah, I've had moments of uncertainty and fear and worry. And sure, I'm a human being, but never have I ever felt that feeling of being dead inside. Never have I ever felt like my life has no meaning, has no purpose, because every day is the day that I designed. And I think that for anybody who may be feeling like there's no meaning, that what are you doing? What is it all for? That there is really is an opportunity to create and design the life that you want. We only get one of them. Tomorrow isn't promised. So I just wanted to leave with that because I think it's really important, because somebody may be listening who was in the place where I was, which was just, I was really suffering and I didn't know what to do. And if you have faith, or even if you don't, taking the courage, taking that leap, sometimes will open up a whole new world. And I promise that you can dance with. You've got the creativity and the resourcefulness to dance with whatever shows up. But don't settle for a life that you're unhappy with, that's unfulfilling. You only get one of them. So take control. Sorry, I just wanted to
Yes,
leave with
thank
that.
you.
Yes.
No, beautiful. Yeah, that really resonated with me because I feel the same way. I have that same divide in my life. Like I was just living life doing, I was behind driving but had no idea where I was going and just was showing up every day to now where again, just like you said, a created life. I've created this and it it's very powerful because it's just joy, really.
And it's not always easy, but there is
No,
a
no,
lot of
no, yes.
satisfaction and fulfillment, and there's absolutely, like, I just don't have regret. I
Yeah.
feel
And I mean, even in the hard though, it's joyful because it's what I want. It's what I've created. So even when it gets tough, that's just motivation to keep pushing because it's beautiful even in the hard.
it's well said.
So that is it for today's episode. At CPA Moms, we believe that women can have a successful career and raise a happy family. If you are ready to embrace work-life harmony and connect with like-minded women, join our CPA Moms Facebook community. Just click the link in the show notes or search CPA Moms on Facebook. We can't wait to welcome you. Until next time, thank you for being here. We see you, we believe in you, and we can't wait to grow with you.